Nigerian Kung Fu. The year is 1982, and a small army of heavily armed triad members wait in front of a factory on the outskirts of Hong Kong. "Where is this guy?" asked Wei as he lit his cigarette. He was the athletically built leader in his late 20s of the armed 24-man crew who, like him, were all smartly dressed in black suits, waiting by half a dozen black Mercedes with tinted windows. "Sorry I'm late," said a voice. "June, what are you doing here?" asked Wei, addressing a slim 15-year-old boy, dressed similarly to him, only he wasn't wearing a tie. The boy had a katana blade strapped to his back and was holding a black traveling bag in his right hand. "I'm the one you have an appointment with." "You're the Tialong's new enforcer?" "My predecessor has, shall we say, retired, and I've taken on all his affairs." "Go home, June. Trust me, this isn't the way to deal with an absentee father." June responds by reaching into his bag, bringing out a severed head and throwing it before the gang leader. "What the?" Before Wei could finish his sentence, he and his men suddenly found themselves in the forest, surrounded by primal eyes staring out from the shadows. The men, engulfed with fear, responded by drawing out their guns and opening fire at what were revealed to be giant wolves that in turn leapt out and ripped them into pieces. When the carnage was over, Wei found himself on the floor, back outside the factory, surrounded by the blood and body parts of all his men, with June, covered in blood, standing over him with his katana blade against his neck. "I wish I didn't have to make an example out of you." 10 years later, on the streets of Wahum Estate in Lagos, Nigeria, 3 boys walked down the street in the middle of the day. 10-year-old Yomi, who was slim and average height for his age, walked behind while his 2 cousins, Ladipo, who was the same age and size as him, and Tokunbo, Ladipo's 15-year-old brother, who was about 5 foot 7 inches with an athletic build, walked in front, snickering. "Are you sure this is the correct way to Ubong's house?" asked Yomi, who was clearly unsure of his surroundings. "This is a shortcut," responded Tokunbo, after briefly composing himself. With a simple nod of the head, Ladipo gave a signal to Tokunbo. He then picked up a stone before they both proceeded to run at Yomi, who was now confused, and pushed him to the ground. As Yomi hit the ground, Ladipo threw the stone on an open black gate of a huge, large house Yomi was in front of, while still on the ground. The brothers then proceeded to run from their cousin and hide behind some bushes 200 meters up the road. As Yomi got to his feet, he came face to face with the vicious guard dog of the house he was standing in front of, that was now provoked by the action of his cousin. Yomi, who everyone knew was terrified of dogs, ran as fast as he could, scared out of his mind. His cousin could no longer contain their laughter as Yomi ran past the bushes they were hiding behind. Yomi ran for what seemed like a lifetime from the dog that was unrelenting, before falling at the feet of a casually dressed middle-aged and slightly overweight Chinese man, who intercepted the dog by petting it, before sending it on its way. "No need to be afraid, it only wanted to play with you," said the man as he helped Yomi, who was in tears, to his feet. "Come inside, let's get you cleaned up," said the man. The stranger took Yomi into his home, in front of which Yomi fell, and dusted all the dirt off Yomi, as well as cleaned the scratches on his arms and legs. The man then gave Yomi a glass of water and a small bowl of fruit. "Yomi?" said Cynthia, the slightly stocky 10-year-old daughter of the man who helped Yomi, as she walked in. "You know this boy?" responded the man. "We're in the same class at school," answered Cynthia. "Then why don't you stay for lunch?" invited the man. While Cynthia and her father prepared lunch, Yomi observed a dojo type set up in the back garden of Cynthia's home, where there was a punch bag, a Wing Chun wooden dummy, laid down training mats, and an array of Kung Fu themed weapons ready for use, all under a roof that gave enclosure while still touching on some of the benefits of training outdoors. 30 minutes later, Cynthia, her father, and her classmates sat round the table and had lunch together. Jollof rice, fried plantain and stew, said Yomi, a bit surprised. When in Rome, replied Cynthia's father as he winked at Yomi. After lunch, Yomi helped Cynthia clear the table and wash up. You don't have to do all that, said Cynthia's father. It's okay, it's the least I can do after all your generosity, said Yomi as he continued to assist Cynthia. Cynthia told me about your problems at home, said Cynthia's father as he watched Yomi and his daughter clean up. I met my cousins for the first time 3 years ago when they visited my mom and I in England. That Christmas, me and Laddie were best friends. Before then, the thought of coming to live here in Nigeria was terrifying. But after that Christmas, when my mother presented the idea, I jumped on the opportunity and even begged to live with my uncle so I could be with Laddie. And my mom agreed. The thing is, ever since I moved in with my uncle 3 years ago, they have been making my life a living hell, informed Yomi. Why haven't you told your mother? Asked Cynthia's father. She organized her whole life around the plan of me living at my uncle's house until I finished my secondary school education. I figured the best I could do is endure until then, explained Yomi. That is very selfless of you, said Cynthia's father. Are you some kind of Kung Fu master? Asked Yomi. No, I'm just a practitioner who trains to stay healthy, laughed Cynthia's father. Would you teach me what you know? Asked Yomi. Why? So you can fight your cousins, responded Cynthia's father. So I can protect myself, said Yomi. Cynthia's father goes into his study and returns with a book. Everything you need to handle your situation can be found in this book, said Cynthia's dad, handing Yomi a Bible. The next day, Yomi sat in his maths lesson, staring at his classmate Linda, a girl in his class with a happy disposition who always seemed to move in slow motion when he saw her. An hour 15 minutes later, Cynthia and Yomi left the class together for break. You should say hi to her, said Cynthia, noticing Yomi still staring at Linda. Huh? Responded Yomi, snapping out of his trance. You should talk to Linda, repeated Cynthia. Why? Because you obviously like her. I wouldn't know what to say. Speak to her the way you would speak to me, said Cynthia, then physically pushing Yomi towards his crush. Hiya, blurted out Yomi by sheer reflex, almost falling due to Cynthia's push, getting Linda's attention. Hey Yomi, did Mr. Adeyemi say the test was this Thursday or next Thursday? Casually asked Linda. Before Yomi could compose himself to say anything, his classmate Michael interjected, asking, Is it true you wet the bed? What? Responded Yomi, confused. Don't try and deny it. You had to change your sheets this morning, said Ladipo, escorted by 3 of his friends, causing a lot of children in the vicinity to laugh and mock Yomi, who had no idea what to do. 2 months later, on a Friday evening, Yomi and his cousins, each handing their report cards to his uncle, their father, one by one. An overall percentage of 82. Not bad. Let's step it up because you're going into your final year, commented Dr. Shodigbo, as he handed Tokunbo, his oldest son, back his report card. Temi, his daughter, who was 2 years younger than Tokunbo, then stood forward. An overall percentage of 90. Keep it up. Next year, you're going into your senior secondary school, said Dr. Shodigbo, handing his daughter back her report card. Ladipo was up next and he handed in his common entrance report, which decided if he would go into secondary school a year early. An overall percentage of 92. Well done, son. You are definitely ready for secondary school, commented Dr. Shodigbo, handing his youngest son back his results. Yomi was up next and he too handed in his common entrance report, which decided if he would go into secondary school a year early. An overall percentage of 60. Not good enough. You're clearly not ready for secondary school. You will need to do your final year of primary school, commented Dr. Shodigbo as he handed his nephew back his report card. But you only need 50% to pass, quietly and disappointedly stated Yomi as his report card was handed back to him. His uncle reacted by getting up and slapping him across the face. You have the audacity to talk back to me after walking here with 60%? The next day, Yomi sat with Cynthia on the floor of her garden dojo. It's not fair. I passed the common entrance exam. Why is he making me do an extra year? Laments Yomi, with tears in his eyes, as Cynthia physically consoles him by placing her arm around him. If it helps, my dad is making me stay until primary 6 too, says Cynthia. Why? Asks Yomi, wiping his tears and visibly calming down, as having Cynthia by his side for the next year did make things better for him. My dad is overprotective. He says there's no rush. Plus, I don't mind, explains Cynthia. I guess me doing the last year means I will get a break from being tortured by my cousins, says Yomi, adopting the half-glass full mentality illustrated by his friend. Cynthia then goes into the kitchen to get them both some ice cream. That is very noble of you, said Jiang as his daughter entered the kitchen. He's my friend and he practically has no one. Besides, waiting another year simply means I'll be the right age when I go to secondary school, responds Cynthia. Jiang responds by hugging his daughter and kissing her on her forehead. If that's what you want, I'll support you. That is what I want, says Cynthia. The next afternoon, Auntie Femi, Dr. Shodipo's ex-wife, drove home their oldest daughter, Lola. Hello, Yum Yum, greeted Auntie Femi as she hugged Yomi, displaying why she was his only source of affection as far as family was concerned. Hello, Auntie, Yomi responded as Lola greeted her siblings in the background. After greeting all her children, Auntie Femi prepared a meal of yam and corned beef stew. Yum Yum, why don't you pray before we eat? Lovingly requested Auntie Femi as she pulled one of her nephew's cheeks. Thank you, Lord, for the food we're about to eat. Please provide for the less fortunate people of the world. I ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen, echoed Auntie Femi, showing much delight with her nephew's prayer. Ladipo, unhappy with all the attention Yomi was getting from his mother, subtly nudged Yomi hard, causing his fork to fall to the ground. Yomi in turn got up from his seat to pick it up from under the table. 3 hours later, Auntie Femi was saying goodbye to everyone as it was time to leave. Yum Yum, why are you crying? Don't worry, I'll be back to visit before you know it, said Auntie Femi, seeing her nephew was visibly upset because she was going. Yes, Yomi was upset because she was leaving, but that wasn't the only reason why. He knew as soon as she would leave, his cousin would resume to treating him like a second-class citizen, and in that moment he had gotten too used to the peace of heaven she had brought with her. Auntie Femi embraced her nephew one last time before driving off. This guy's a pervert, yelled Ladipo as he pointed at Yomi, who hadn't even had the time to get ready to face his usual hell on earth. Earlier on, he purposely dropped his fork on the ground so he could look up Mom's skirt, continued Ladipo. Before Yomi could even have the chance to deny the accusation, Tokupo punched him in the face, which dropped the defenseless 10-year-old. All his cousins began to kick, stomp, and punch him while he curled up on the floor. They then stripped him down to his underwear and began to hit him all over his body with belts until they were exhausted. At this point, they locked him in the guest room, where he stayed in prison for most of the summer holidays. Their father never paid much attention to Yomi to even notice what was going on. And when their mother visited, they lied he went away with his mother for a while, which she believed, as verifying via her ex-husband, wasn't possible as they were not on speaking terms. Hello? Is Yomi at home? Asked Cynthia one afternoon, after knocking, as she at this point hadn't heard from her best friend for 3 weeks. He's not available, replied Ladipo, then slamming the door in her face. 4 weeks later, Ladipo, who was now in his first year of secondary school, had gone off to boarding school, like his sister Temi and his brother Tokumbo. And Lola had gone back to university, leaving Yomi alone in the house to finish off another year of primary school. Hey, where were you all summer? Greeted Cynthia as she took a seat beside Yomi. Nowhere, quietly responded Yomi, who was visibly shaken up from the torture he had been put through for the last 7 weeks. In fact, for the rest of the day, Cynthia watched her friend just either sit or stand around, distant from the world around him, and only being responsive enough to survive the harsh environment of a Nigerian primary school. 7 p.m. that evening, Cynthia escorted her dad to put fuel in his car, with the hopes he would buy her some ice cream. "Isn't that your friend?" asked Jiang, as they both noticed Yomi sitting outside the locked gates of their school. "What are you doing out here at this time?" asked Jiang as he approached Yomi. "I'm waiting to be picked up," quietly responded Yomi. "I'll take you home. It's way too late for you to be sitting out here," gently insisted Jiang. "Where have you been? The driver said he came to pick you up, but you are nowhere to be found," yelled Dr. Shodupo as Jiang presented him his nephew. Yomi in turn had no energy to even announce to both Jiang and his uncle that the driver had lied, because he, like everyone else that was a part of the household, saw him as a second-class citizen. "I'm sure there has been some wires crossed. If it helps, I can bring him home when I pick up my daughter from the same school. In fact, if you don't mind, I can drive him to school as well. We live just 5 minutes from you," offered Jiang calmly, able to see the situation for what it really was. "That would be much appreciated," responded Dr. Shodupo as he shoved his nephew into the house. After another school day, Jiang picked up Yomi and Cynthia and brought them to his home. "Yomi, I have decided to teach you martial arts every day, which will include a 30-minute Bible study beforehand," announced Jiang as he stood before both kids in his front room. Yomi, for the first time in 7 weeks, smiled before hugging Jiang while breaking down into tears. After hugging the abused boy, Jiang took a knee to look Yomi in his eyes and said, "I'm not teaching you martial arts to hurt people. In fact, you should only use any skills you acquire as a last result. The purpose of this training is to strengthen your resolve, to face the hard life you clearly have ahead of you." "Yes, sir," responded Yomi as he wiped the tears from his eyes. Jiang gets to his feet and looks down at the boy and says, "Call me Sifu." 24 hours later, Yomi, wearing a weighted vest, stood before Jiang with Cynthia by his side. In the world of combat, deception is your friend, especially when faced with an opponent with any kind of competency. This is why being able to throw a punch or a kick in itself is below fundamental. This is why we'll be starting with footwork and body position. You will execute the footwork pattern 1,000 times with Cynthia's supervision, instructed Jiang. "Yes, Sifu," replied Yomi enthusiastically. Jiang then proceeded to go into his office. "Sorry in advance," said Cynthia. "For what?" asked Yomi. "As far as training is concerned, I will be following my father's instructions to the letter, which includes telling him if he refused to meet your target," explained Cynthia. There is a knock on the door, and Jiang answers. "Hey neighbor, here's some yam porridge I made for you and your daughter," said Udeme, an extremely attractive woman in her 30s who clearly had a thing for the single dad. "Thank you very much. I would invite you in, but I'm giving the kids a lesson," said Jiang, who was visibly uncomfortable as he smiled. He accepted his neighbor's gift and gently shut the door, at which point Cynthia and Yomi giggled as they resumed training. After a week of going through stepping work patterns thousands of times, Yomi had to implement them with Cynthia, who was essentially a martial arts expert trapped in a 10-year-old body, throwing all sorts of attacks at him. "Sorry," said Cynthia after flooring him with a spinning back kick. It's okay," said Yomi, who was on the ground barely able to speak. In between getting his butt being handed to him, Yomi had to practice forms from karate, taekwondo, wushu, Wing Chun, Western boxing, Thai boxing, and Shaolin Kung Fu. As the days went by, Yomi began to get hit less and less, until it got to the point that not only was he not getting hits anymore, but he was showing off while doing so. At which point, Jiang made him do the exercise blindfolded, which meant the beatings resumed for another 6 weeks. Before long, it was April, and Yomi's cousins were home from boarding school for the Easter break. Yomi, who was visibly a lot more confident, did his best to stay away from his cousins, so as to honor the promise he made to his Sifu not to fight with them. This for the most part was easy, as they went out of the way to exclude him from outings, movie nights, and any fun activity they took part in, which meant Yomi could keep up his training without their knowledge. One afternoon, Ladipo and a few of his friends from school were hanging out in the living room. Yomi walked in to get his notebook, while greeting everyone with a smile and a nod. As he walked out, Ladipo attempted to trip him over, but Yomi effortlessly and subtly avoided it. 3 hours later, Ladipo had just seen his friends out when he noticed Yomi was about to walk past him. Ladipo in turn tried to bump him to the ground, but Yomi effortlessly spun out of the way and looked at his cousin with a confused expression on his face, who at this point was on the floor. Ladipo got up and started throwing punches and slaps at Yomi, who effortlessly avoided every single one of them without making contact. "Calm down before you hurt yourself," said Yomi, before finally walking away. The next day, Jiang, with Cynthia by his side, stood before Yomi. "When I was a young man, I was a very good fighter, who had beaten every opponent that ever stood before me with clean, crisp strikes, until I came across Winston, a man that was intelligent, rough, strong, and understood body mechanics from years of grappling," said Jiang, then signaling Cynthia with a nod, who in turn threw Yomi to the ground with a judo technique. "From here on, along with the rest of your training, you will be understanding body mechanics from the perspective of grappling," said Jiang, as Cynthia helped Yomi up to his feet. After 9 months of Yomi training hard in various elements of Jiang's martial arts training regime, Cynthia, alongside her father, observed Yomi training. "He's really gotten good," said Cynthia, impressed with her classmates. "Hours of training focused on him, talent and a lot of personal hardship can do that," commented Jiang, watching his latest protege. 24 hours later, while standing in front of 15 large bricks stacked on top of each other, Jiang, with Cynthia by his side, stood before Yomi. There are 2 major ways of generating a great deal of force. First one is through brute force, which for you right now, against any competent opponent, isn't an option. The second is managing your chi energy, which requires mastering 3 steps. Step 1, being able to sense your chi, which will feel like a hurricane in the shape of a ball in the middle of your chest. Step 2, focusing that ball as an energy source, then spreading it from that ball around your body until you feel like you're wearing an invisible suit of armor, explains Jiang. "What's step 3? asked Yomi. At which point, Cynthia stepped forward and breaks all 15 bricks with a single strike. "Get to work," said Jiang, leaving Yomi staring at Cynthia with his mouth wide open. "The more martial arts skills you demonstrate, the more I wonder how much of a friend you really are," Yomi finally commented. "How so?" responded Cynthia. "For years you witnessed many people make my life a living hell. You never once stepped in to help me," said Yomi. "I helped you every time, without having to land a single punch. Besides, if my dad ever caught me fighting outside of training, it'll be over for me," explained Cynthia. For the next month, for an hour after the physical grueling aspect of his training, Yomi would meditate, attempting to access and wield his chi energy. And for a month, nothing seemed to be happening. After 6 weeks, Yomi began to wonder whether he would be successful in this part of his training. Then after 8 weeks, Yomi experienced a sensation that was nothing like what his Sifu had described to him. This sensation felt like his whole being, both inside and out, was consumed by an indescribable energy from within. Yomi opened his eyes that were now engulfed in green energy and got to his feet. He then approached the 15 blocks stacked in front of him and shattered them with a simple touch, at which point he snapped out of his state and seemingly returned back to normal. What just happened? Yomi asked himself. At that exact time, somewhere in China, a young man meditating in a dark room in front of a single lit candle opened his eyes, sensing Yomi's energy release. The next morning, Yomi woke up feeling strange, unfamiliar, but good. The summer holidays were well underway, but Jiang had given his student the weekend off training as he had to attend to some work-related issues. So as to avoid his cousins, Yomi decided to go for a walk. After walking for about 20 minutes, he came across some boys, his age, playing football on a large field near the estate's exit. "Come play with us. We need someone to make the teams even," said one of the boys, who noticed Yomi watching them. "Sure," said Yomi, then joining the game. 2 minutes into the game, Yomi noticed he was much faster than everyone else, to the point what seemed like an extremely light and slow jog was the equivalent of other boys sprinting at full speed, and even then they couldn't keep up. At one point, someone kicked the ball over the estate wall, which was 10 meters high, and with what seemed like a zero-energy skip, Yomi leaped over the wall into a busy street, shocking everyone who saw him, causing him to leap back over the wall and run home. "What's happening?" Yomi asked himself, now sitting on his bed. After thinking for about 5 minutes, he creates a makeshift mask with an old shirt he rips apart and heads back out unnoticed. He then stands behind a tree several miles away from his home and proceeds to race cars on foot, and soon realizes he could effortlessly outrun cars that were moving in the region of 40 miles per hour without even breaking a sweat. He then proceeded to walk to his Sifu's home, which was now empty, and effortlessly leaped over Jiang's wall and straight into the garden dojo area, where he proceeded to break several stacked blocks with just a flick of his finger. He then proceeded to practice various martial arts forms, utilizing acrobatic skills that were beyond any normal human being. When it started to get dark, Yomi began to walk home, when he notices half a dozen armed men approach the same mansion his cousins tormented him in front of almost a year ago. Yomi, putting on his mask, approached the men. "Hello," said Yomi. The men reacted by pointing their guns at the masked 11-year-old. "Are you crazy?" said one of the men, attempting to hit Yomi with the back of his gun. But from Yomi's perspective, he might as well have been moving in slow motion. And in 3 moves, Yomi grabbed his gun, broke it, and sent his attacker flying across 8 feet. The men, fully aware their guns had no bullets in them, as they were planning to rob the house based on a bluff, dropped their weapons and ran, making the assumption that the masked child standing before them was some kind of demon. That night, Yomi dropped on his bed and stayed awake all night on a high. The next morning, Yomi answered the front door. "What are you doing here?" asked Yomi, after laying eyes on his best friend. "My dad is still spending time with some clients and said it was alright I went with you all to the summer fair," informed Cynthia as she made her way into the house. "Has my uncle okayed this?" asked Yomi. "Yep," answered Cynthia cheerfully. Cynthia goes with Yomi and his cousins to the annual church summer fair. His cousins left Yomi alone on the journey to the fair because Cynthia was around, which meant they had to be on their best behavior to avoid any discipline from their father, at least when he was present. "After you mastered your chi, did anything weird happen to you?" asked Yomi as he and Cynthia walked from stall to stall. "My body felt a bit tingly when I got the air armor on," answered Cynthia. "Anything else?" "Why, what happened?" asked Cynthia, now suspicious. "Nothing, I'm just checking if I'm doing things right," lied Yomi. Then noticing Linda and 2 of her friends looking at some homemade teddy bears. "Follow me," whispered Yomi to Cynthia, before confidently walking up to Linda and her friends. "Interesting taste you got there," said Yomi as he approached his crush. "Hey, we were just saying how heinous they look," responded Linda. "I think they're endearing, especially when you look at the messages on their chests. See this one? Says I need you," said Yomi, causing Linda and her friends to laugh, while Cynthia was taken aback by Yomi's newfound swagger. "Of course you like soft toys," interjected Ladipo, standing in the middle of 2 of his mates. "If I don't see you around, maybe I'll catch up with you at school?" said Yomi to Linda, ignoring his cousin. "I would like that," said Linda, feeling Yomi's newfound confidence. "Hey, bedwetter, I was talking to you," yelled out Ladipo, halting Yomi's original intent to walk away. "You can't prove I wet the bed," I, however, can prove right here, right now, that you and your friends are a bunch of sissies, said Yomi after walking right up to his cousin. Cynthia pulls Yomi away and asks, "What are you doing?" "I'm standing up for myself." "No, you're provoking him." "He started it." "If you get into a fight, I will tell your Sifu." At this point, Ladipo tries to attack Yomi from behind, but is dropped with a back kick. Yomi then follows up with a single spin kick, which drop both Ladipo's friends who attempt to rush him. Cynthia gives Yomi a dirty look before walking away from him. The next day, Yomi knocks on the front door of his Sifu, ready to resume training. Cynthia opens the door, still visibly upset with him, and leads him to the entrance of the training area, where Jiang was waiting for him with a stern look on his face. "I see you wasted no time," said Yomi to Cynthia, who in turn ignored him and went to the kitchen. "I'm not going to apologize for standing up for myself," said Yomi defiantly as he entered the presence of his Sifu. "Are you a far superior fighter than your cousin?" asked Jiang. "Yes," responded Yomi. "In a fight, does your cousin have any hope of touching you, let alone beating you?" "No." "When your cousin engaged you, did you choose to escalate the situation instead of walking away?" "Yes." "Was striking your cousin and his friends down the only option at your disposal?" "He attacked without warning." "Most attacks are without warning," pointed out Jiang, then attacking Yomi with speed and power that no normal human person could fathom. Yet, to Jiang's complete shock and surprise, Yomi was blocking and avoiding several of his attacks. After Yomi dodged the seventh attack, Jiang struck Yomi in the body with a side kick, which caused his student to slide back. Jiang immediately followed up his attack with a dash punch, which Yomi blocked while his body and eyes were engulfed in green energy. "You opened your chi gate?" said Jiang, then skipping back from his student, who at this point snapped out of his states. Yomi then ran out of his teacher's home. Cynthia, who had been watching the whole thing from the kitchen window, walked up to her father. "Stay here. I'll talk to him," said Jiang. Yomi, confused, frustrated and scared, ran towards his uncle's house, when Jiang, at an insane speed, intercepted him. "The fact that you don't seem that shocked says to me you have been experimenting with your newfound abilities," said Jiang, as Yomi calmly accepted he couldn't get away from his teacher. Jiang then led Yomi to a nearby outside cafe, not far from where they stood, where Jiang organized them a table along with some soft drinks. "The fact that you've opened your chi gate makes what you did 10 times worse," said Jiang. "I'm sorry, it's just I'm tired of my cousins feel like they can do whatever they like to me whenever they feel like," said Yomi. "When I was your age, I was homeless on the streets of China. This meant everyone treated me like garbage day in and day out. One night, while looking for a place to sleep, I witnessed two feared and powerful rival gangs fight each other, with one man standing out. His name was Wang. He took out 20 men without breaking a sweat in a way that seemed supernatural. After defeating his enemies, Zhuang noticed me watching. When our eyes made contact, I tried to run away, but in a blink of an eye, he stood before me. I thought he was going to kill me, but instead he took me in and cared for me like I was his own, which also meant he trained me thoroughly in the art of combat. By the time I was in my late teens, I was his enforcer, and believe me, you didn't want me knocking on your door if you owed him money. One night, I was sent to a restaurant owner who was behind on protection money imposed on him by Zhuang. I remember his 19-year-old daughters begged on his behalf, which further fueled my discomfort I had with the whole situation. So I paid the debt with my own money and kept doing so. Zhuang was none the wiser, for as long as he got his money, he was happy. I and the restaurant owner's daughter fell in love, after which I got heavily involved in an underground church that ran out of the building. Eventually, me and the restaurant owner's daughter got married and had a son, who we named Jun. He grew to be a martial arts prodigy. When Jun was 15, I could no longer reconcile being Zhuang's enforcer and a practicing Christian. For after years of telling myself if I only dealt with the quote-unquote bad guys, God would be fine with my career path. But in a dream, the Holy Spirit opened my eyes to the fact that Jesus died for everyone, including those I deemed as bad. My eyes was also open to the fact that Zwang took me in because of my ability to open my chi gate. You see, in the midst of this natural world, God has divinely placed sleeper cell type angels in human form, which he activates every time a demon prematurely tries to physically manifest and wreak havoc in this plane of existence. The thing is, these angels can remain dormant for a whole lifetime without needing to be activated. However, every generation, a handful of these angels all over the world are able to access these divine abilities by opening what we call a chi gate as a result of rigorous combat training that pushes their body beyond its limits. Wait, are you telling me you and I are angels? Asked Yomi. Yes and no. You see, until we're officially activated, we're human, which means we can access the salvation of Jesus Christ, but because we have opened our chi gate, we're much stronger and faster than any normal person. Because Wang delved in the dark arts, he could sense this ability in me, and so manipulated me in being his weapon. He made me believe that anyone could access this chi gate state through training, and so I instilled that same belief in my son. When Jun was unable to reach the chi gate state, he grew angry and frustrated. Zwang in turn offered him an alternative of placing a demon inside of him, which in exchange for great power will guarantee him 100 years on this planet, after which the demon will have complete ownership over his entire being. I begged Jun to run away with me and his pregnant mother, but he chose to become Zwang's enforcer. I chose to come to Nigeria, because I know he would never think to look for me here. The whole situation put immense strain on my wife, causing her to die while giving birth to Cynthia. And I have lived a simple life ever since. You see, I'm telling you this story because whatever mindset you choose to adopt in itself is judgment, because that mindset will follow you wherever you go. Zwang's total disregard for people has made him a prisoner to the dark arts. Jun's selfish ambition means he is now enslaved to a demon, and my decision to abuse my power for 2 decades has meant me losing my wife and my son. Do you now understand why I put so much emphasis on following Jesus and having self-control? Yes, Sifu, answered Yomi, who was now very sober. While Jiang and Yomi were speaking, Cynthia was practicing some Tai Chi movements in the training area. Wow, you were nothing more than a bump on her mother's stomach the last time I saw you, said Jun as he casually walked into the area. Cynthia, fully aware of who Jun was, went into a fighting stance, showing she was ready to engage him in combat. How cute, said Jun with a big smile on his face. Jiang returns home with Yomi, only to find Cynthia was nowhere to be found. He then notices an address with Jun's signature underneath, carved into the wall beside the entrance of his training area. Go home, Yomi, said Jiang in a very serious tone, then leaving the house as Yomi looked on, now feeling very uneasy. An hour later, Jun stands in front of the large window of his luxurious hotel suite, the size of a 5-bedroom house, where he observed the hustle and bustle of Lagos City. Who knew a West African country had so much investment opportunities? Commented Jun as Jiang entered the room and noticed Cynthia sitting on a nearby couch, determined to be brave. It's good to see you, father, said Jun as he turned to face Jiang. Son, what are you doing? Asked Jiang with a tone that was both soft and stern. Can't a guy reconnect with his family? What has it been, 10, 11 years? Responded Jun. Kidnapping your sister isn't the best way to reconnect, said Jiang. You got me. I'm not here for a family reunion. I'm here to collect the debt you owe my employer, said Jun. What debt? Dear father, you leaving abruptly cost my employer a lot of money. How much? Your life, said Jun, now abandoning his playful tone. You would kill your own father? I would kill my father and my sister. I would gladly let you kill me. with the hope that the act will bring you back to your senses. However, I made a promise to your mother to do everything in my power to love and support your sister for as long as possible, said Jiang, opening his chi gate. Jun's eyes became engulfed in flames as he tapped into the power of the demon placed within while attacking Jiang. Both men, being near enough equals in terms of raw power, meant the fight came down to combat skills, which was on display at the highest level, as Jun unleashed an offense that was fluid, primal, and ruthless. Jiang was more poised and precise as he blocked, dodged, and countered his son's attacks, including the ones of a supernatural nature. At one point, Jiang catches Jun with a back fist to the face, which followed up by pulling him into a shoulder strike that threw him across the room. "Get out of here," said Jiang to Cynthia, who had now seemingly taken cover behind the chair she had previously been sitting on. "What is it you used to say to me? Deception is the #1 weapon in combat," said Jun, who was seemingly on the floor. Jiang then found himself stabbed in the stomach by a katana blade held by his son. You see, without even realizing, Jiang had been placed under an illusion spell by Jun, which meant the person he thought was Cynthia was in fact Jun, and the person he thought was Jun was in fact Cynthia, who was now lying across the room unconscious. "You trained her well," said Jun, standing over Jiang, who was trying extremely hard to stay conscious. Yomi then suddenly burst through the entrance door of the room in his chi gate state and kicks Jun into a wall. Yomi then goes to Jiang, who was laying on the ground, pressing down on his wound. "Sifu!" cries out Yomi as he kneels and cradles Jiang in his arms. "So you were the one I sensed," laughed Jun as he got to his feet. "You can't trust your eyes," says Jiang to Yomi. Yomi then gets to his feet and rips off his shirt, using part of it as a blindfold to cover his eyes. Jian, without saying a word, attacks, creating a battle between him and his father's young student, which was a crescendo of high-level martial arts and supernatural abilities. Yomi, using every sense except his sight, made him immune to Jiang's illusions. This, along with a counterattack based to his fighting style and supreme focus, caused him to land several devastating blows on Jun. Jun, severely injured from the fight, fully gives in to the demon inside of him, causing him to take on a monstrous-looking form. Yomi, moving on sheer supernatural instincts, teleports and appears with his hands around Jun's neck, then detonating his body, creating an explosion of pure white energy, which fully disintegrates Jun. After the dust settles, Yomi is on his knees in his normal state. 1 month later, Yomi enters Jiang's home, smartly dressed in his new school's housewear, which was a blue and white checkered short-sleeved shirt, a brown pair of khaki trousers, along with polished brown sandals worn neatly with a white pair of socks. "You look smart," said Cynthia, dusting off Yomi's shoulder. "Thanks. I leave for boarding school in about an hour," said Yomi. "I told you you'd be here before you know it," said Cynthia as she playfully messed around with Yomi. Jiang then walked into the room with a box. "Thank you for everything," said Yomi to Jiang, as the reality of the fact that he was about to part ways with two of the only people who really had his back for the past 4 years. "Us moving to America doesn't mean we won't see again," said Jiang, then handing Yomi the box in his hand. "Just because you heal much faster than the average man, I don't want you getting any ideas. But in case you do, this might come in handy," said Jiang, as Yomi opened the box to find a modern green ninja outfit, complete with a visor. "It changes color so you can blend in with the background," excitedly informed Cynthia. Yomi reacts by hugging both Cynthia and Jiang with tears in his eyes. Hello there, hope you enjoyed JOMAJ Comics' latest installment. Subscribe to JOMAJ Comics' YouTube page to be updated when more graphic novels are available online by simply going to www.jomajstudios.com, or do a Google search, as sometimes it doesn't come up when you search on YouTube for reasons beyond me. Become a patron, as support is much appreciated and goes towards helping disadvantaged young people all over the world. Also send your feedback via comments. Good or bad, they are precious to me.